is Niki, but between my family, sometimes I go by Nick. I see myself as a woman, and sometimes a man. I wake up one day totally feeling like a woman, wearing pink sparkly skirts and rocking a Barbiecore aesthetic. Then 2 days later, I'm drowning in a men's XL hoodie, t-shirt, and gym shorts. Sometimes it would be more extreme. I'd wake up, wear some skinny jeans and a woman's t-shirt, but by the end of the day, I'd be itching to change into my baggy clothes so I could hide my curves and look more masculine. I feel feminine. I feel empowered. I feel like a woman. And then I feel androgynous and neutral. And then I feel super masculine, like I could never be a woman. I thought I was crazy. Why couldn't I figure out who I was? Am I a man? Am I a woman? Am I both? Am I neither? If I don't know who I am, well, then what's my purpose on this planet? And then it hit me. I realized I am gender fluid and gender flux. Gender fluid is when your gender identity switches between different genders, and gender flux is when your identity to a specific gender or genders fluctuates in intensity. To make things simpler, we need to start by knowing the difference between gender and sex. Sex refers to the reproductive organs you are born with, while gender is a socially constructed identity. When we say gender is a social construct, we mean it has been assigned to people of a certain sex and has been the norm of society for thousands of years. Think about even before you're born. If you're born female, you're given pink, princesses, Barbies, bows. But if you're born male, cars, trucks, sports, superheroes are what you're expected to be interested in. Roles, behaviors, expressions, and more are often defined by our gender. These gender social constructs put us all in boxes before we've even taken a breath. So in terms of gender and sex, what does it mean to be transgender? To be transgender means your gender identity does not match the sex you were assigned at birth. Perhaps you were born male, but find you identify as a female and find joy and comfort in expressing yourself as a female. And the opposite is true. Perhaps you were born female, but find yourself at peace when expressing yourself as a male. But what if you feel like you don't fit into these two boxes of genders? What if the box you were assigned makes you feel trapped, but the other box doesn't fit either? What if you don't even want to live in either of these two boxes? We are taught not to question gender because that's the way it's always been. But who made these rules anyway? Now, transgender is an umbrella term with many other identities under it. One of these identities is non-binary. Binary meaning having two parts, in this case, those parts being male and female. So non-binary is a term to describe people that fall somewhere between or outside these two categories. Right now, more than 20% of Gen Z identify as LGBTQ, and 1 in 10 LGBTQ people are transgender. To put that into perspective, every 50 young adults you walk by, chances are one of them is transgender. 95% of transgender Americans identify as non-binary, according to a UCLA study. Those aren't insignificant numbers. It indicates that this community is much larger than we are led to believe, and we likely all know and love someone who identifies as non-binary. And yet, the transgender community is often alienated from the rest of society, and even from some of the LGBTQ community. This alienation comes from the vast and wide misconceptions about the transgender community and the experiences that transgender people face. The most common misconception is that the trans community is often described as just being confused, misguided, abnormal, and even trying to trick others. This is not supported by data, and there is promising science that can point to more understanding of the transgender community. Scientists have found, and are continuing to research, a biological link to a person's gender identity, indicating that transgender people are assigned genders at birth that don't match their biological sex. While we're still learning the complexities of gender and sex, we do know that if transgender folks were confused or misguided, we would see an incredible amount of regret from individuals who transition to the gender they identify with. LGBTQ group Sparta found multiple studies showing that only 1% to 2% of transgender individuals regret transitioning. That is an incredibly low percentage. Another common misconception, and one that gets a lot of attention, is that kids are too young to know their gender identity. This too is not the case. Trans Youth Project has found that children as young as 5 years old respond to gender association tests as quickly as children who are cisgender. Many transgender individuals recall always knowing their gender did not match their assigned sex, but the only doubt they ever had was that the whole world was telling them they were wrong. There are trained medical professionals whose goal is to identify gender dysphoria, gender nonconformity, and early experimentation. In all circumstances, they recommend parents and adults foster and provide a supportive environment that allows the kids to drive the process of establishing their own identity. These decisions are not made lightly, as many of us would be led to believe, and children and parents seek a lot of guidance as they make these important decisions. Despite there being scientific evidence proving that trans people are real, and advocates are constantly attempting to dispel these myths and misconceptions, the trans community still faces a lot of discrimination and hate. Transphobia can exist in anyone, anywhere, at any moment. More than 60% of transgender Americans have experienced discrimination in their personal and work life. They are often caught in the spiral of exclusion and marginalization, being bullied at school, denied access to employment opportunities, rejected, and kicked out of their homes. 1 in 3 transgender people have experienced homelessness, and more than 50% have experienced sexual violence. The transgender community is even more vulnerable to physical violence. They are 7 times more likely to experience physical violence when interacting with the police than cisgender people. These traumatic experiences, which happen every day, lead to extraordinarily high rates of mental health challenges. 82% of transgender Americans have considered killing themselves, and 40% of transgender Americans have actually attempted suicide. Transgender people exist, and we're here to stay, but we need more support. So what can you do to help the transgender community? The first thing we can do is to create space for the transgender community in our everyday conversations. Start by introducing yourself with your name and your pronouns to create that safe space for others to do the same. Using the correct name and pronouns for someone shows you respect their identity and validate their existence and experiences. This may seem like a small thing, since many cisgender people end up taking this for granted, but being called by your name and correct pronouns is a basic human right that helps dignify our experience. I understand that mistakes happen, especially when you're practicing using new pronouns for someone that you knew as a different name or pronoun before, and that's totally okay. It's best to just correct the error and move forward. What matters most is that we're trying. As more people come out and live openly as their authentic selves, we can all do our part to create welcoming spaces in our workplaces and schools. Update your non-discrimination policies to explicitly provide protection for the transgender community. Include support services and healthcare coverage for the LGBTQ community. And create gender-neutral facilities that allow everyone to feel comfortable and safe. One of the best ways to learn more about the transgender experience is to make connections within the transgender community. Surrounding yourself with a diverse group of people is an excellent way to become a more sensitive and well-rounded person. If you realize that you don't have any LGBTQ friends, try putting yourself in spaces that look different from those in your everyday life. Finally, one of the most important things to do is to educate yourself on trans issues. There are so many great resources that we can use to help understand and connect with the transgender community. Follow an activist on Instagram, watch a TikTok, listen to a podcast. There are so many great resources that we can learn from. Being transgender is the reality for so many people across the world, especially young adults and teenagers. Remember, being transgender is not something you can control. I didn't ask to be gender fluid. I didn't ask to feel uncomfortable in my body. I didn't ask to be a part of a community that faces incredibly large amounts of discrimination. But I am proud to be an LGBTQ person and to be able to show my true self all day, every day. The transgender community deserves to be treated as equals, so we need to stand against transphobia, show kindness, and wake up every day choosing love. Thank you.